Hey, what's going on, guys? So today we are looking at a new Sims 4 update, and this one is all about fixes, cleanup, and a bunch of little frustrations that players have been dealing with for way too long. The biggest thing here is that a lot of the attention is on stability, save corruption, endless loading, weird gallery issues, and those annoying soft locks that make you feel like the game is fighting you for no reason. All of that got addressed in this patch. That alone is a huge win. If you have ever had a save that suddenly started acting strange, or a lot that would not load properly, or a download from the gallery that just made everything freeze up, you already know why this matters. These are kinds of problems that do not sound exciting in a patch note, but in actual gameplay, they can ruin a whole session. One of the most welcome changes is the update to phone behavior. Sims were constantly getting hit with calls that did not really make sense, and it sounds silly until you have spent 10 minutes declining the same kind of call over and over. The patch cuts down on a lot of that noise. Festival alerts can now be managed with new notification settings by pack, which is a nice touch because not everyone wants the game constantly interrupting them for every event happening on the calendar. The silence phone option now works properly too, which feels like it should have been solid from the start, but at least it is finally doing its job. There are also a bunch of relationship-related tweaks that make the game feel less random. Dating advice calls now require actual friendship, neighborhood story calls need a friendship link too, and festival or getaway invites now need a friendly relationship. That means fewer weird calls from Sims who barely know each other, which is exactly the kind of logic the game should have had in the first place. Freelancers also no longer get gig calls for careers they are not in, which is one of those little fixes that makes you go, yeah, that should have never been happening. Then there are the gameplay changes tied to specific traits and life states. Sims with the Vicious Dynasty ideal will still earn prestige points from player-directed mean socials, but they are no longer just out there autonomously being mean all the time. That is a nice balance change because it keeps the trait useful without turning your household into chaos without your permission. On the other side of that, Grim Reaper job offers are now restricted to Sims with the Macabre trait, which makes the whole system feel a lot more sensible. It is always better when the game ties these things to the right Sims instead of throwing random stuff at everybody. Gallery fixes are a big deal in this patch too. The thumbnail interface no longer gets stuck after changing filters, and that alone will save people a lot of frustration. There is also a fix for a soft lock that could happen when downloading custom tattoos from the gallery, which is one of those bugs that sounds very specific until it hits your game, and suddenly nothing works the way it should. On top of that, lots with excessive placement cheats were causing endless loading, and that got improved through better nav mesh handling. So if you have ever stared at a loading screen wondering whether the game was ever going to move again, that part of the patch is probably going to matter to you. Build mode and inventory type stuff got attention too. Windows and doors should now display correctly across graphics settings instead of clipping into walls, which is the kind of visual problem that can really stand out once you notice it. The patch also improves how stacked objects, photos, and paintings behave when you move them into inventories, since those items could get stuck on the cursor and make simple actions more annoying than they needed to be. Multiple duplicated sim issues were also fixed, which is another one of those bugs that sounds almost funny until it starts affecting your household. A lot of pack-specific fixes are in here as well. In Get to Work, doctors can interact with patients again and use the deliver food interaction. In Cats and Dogs, Sims can adopt cats and dogs properly now, and a few pet interactions like Feel the Love and bathing small dogs were fixed too. Get Famous got a fix for the hair and makeup task during actor career gigs, which should make that career path less frustrating. Growing Together has a stay over fix, so those calls can happen again after the cooldown and should work in existing saves. Get Together and Eco Lifestyle both got reduced call spam, while High School Years lost the thrifty reminder notification that was probably starting to feel like background noise. Lovestruck had romance calls reduced as well, and Life and Death got a tighter limit on Grim Reaper recruitment calls, so they only go to the Sims who actually fit that role. There is even a Mac-specific improvement in this update, where scratch files are now moved to app data to help reduce save corruption and infinite loading issues. That kind of backend change is easy to overlook, but it can make a real difference for people dealing with stubborn save problems. So overall, this patch feels like a cleanup pass that focuses on making the game behave more like it should have in the first place. Less random calling, fewer broken interactions, fewer gallery headaches, better save stability, and a lot less pointless interruption while you are trying to actually play. It is not the kind of update that grabs you with a giant feature drop, but it is the kind that makes everything around your Sims feel smoother, less annoying, and a lot more reliable.